Everyone in that bank laughed when she walked in, her shoes torn, her hands trembling, her eyes filled with quiet pain. But what they didn't know was that the woman they mocked owned everything around them, including their paychecks, their jobs, and their future. The old wooden doors of First National Bank creaked open, and the noise of polished shoes and soft chatter filled the grand marble hall. A frail black woman, no more than 72, stepped inside. Her coat was faded, her shoes cracked at the edges, and her hands clutched a torn leather bag that had clearly seen decades of use. She paused by the entrance, letting her eyes adjust to the glittering chandeliers above, and for a brief second, the entire bank seemed to stop and look at her. Then, as whispers began to spread, the room filled with low, judgmental laughter. The employees behind the counter exchanged smirks, the kind reserved for people they considered beneath them. Jessica, the branch manager, leaned close to her teller, Tyler, and whispered just loud enough for others to hear, "We've got another one looking for air conditioning." Tyler chuckled, tapping at his keyboard without even glancing up. "Maybe she's lost," he said with a sneer. Amanda, the young clerk, tilted her head and whispered, "Or maybe she's here to ask for spare change." Their laughter echoed across the marble floor, sharp and cruel, bouncing off the tall ceilings as the woman quietly approached the counter. She didn't seem offended. Her face was calm, eyes tired but steady, as though she had seen this kind of cruelty too many times to be surprised by it anymore. "Good morning," she said softly. "I'd like to speak to the manager." Jessica straightened her blazer and crossed her arms. "You're looking at her," she said with a tight smile. "But unless you're here for business, I suggest you visit a shelter. We don't handle donations." The woman looked at her for a long, silent moment. Her gaze wasn't angry. It was observant, assessing, as though she was taking notes on their behavior rather than reacting to it. "I'm not here for donations," she replied calmly. "I've been a customer of this bank for 50 years. That drew another round of laughter. Tyler couldn't help himself. 50 years? Lady, this branch wasn't even built 50 years ago. Amanda giggled. Jessica leaned forward, lowering her voice into a tone dripping with sarcasm. "Do you have any proof of that? Maybe an account number? Or perhaps a fairy tale to go with it?" The woman reached into her bag slowly, pulling out an old checkbook embossed with the bank's original logo, one that hadn't been used in decades. She placed it gently on the counter. The moment Jessica saw it, she hesitated, but pride wouldn't let her admit it. Before the woman could say another word, Jessica motioned to the security guard. "Please escort her outside. We don't tolerate this kind of disruption." The guard, a young man with a confused expression, shifted awkwardly. He didn't want to do it, but he followed orders. "Ma'am," he said hesitantly, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The woman turned to him, her expression still soft. "Son," she said gently, "I opened my first account in this bank before you were even born." The guard swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, ma'am. They said—" She interrupted with a quiet nod. "I know what they said." As he led her toward the door, the employees snickered again, thinking they had done their job. The woman didn't look back, but the moment she stepped into the sunlight, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She took it out, a sleek, modern device that didn't match her appearance at all. Her eyes scanned the screen. A stream of messages flashed from names most people in that bank would recognize from television: executives, CEOs, and board members. One message stood out. "We're ready for your inspection, Madam Chairwoman." She looked back through the glass doors where Jessica and her team were still laughing. Slowly, her lips curved into a knowing, almost sorrowful smile. Every camera in that bank had captured their arrogance, every insult preserved in crystal-clear footage. She knew it was enough. This wasn't just a random visit. It was a test, one she had carefully planned. For months, she'd heard rumors about how her staff treated ordinary customers, but she wanted to see it herself, to feel it. And now she had seen enough. The sun was hot as it glared against the polished cars parked along the street. She walked to the corner where a black SUV waited, the tinted window rolling down just enough for her assistant to see her expression. "Ma'am, are we proceeding?" he asked quietly. She looked straight ahead, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the noise of the city. "Bring the resignation papers to Fifth Avenue, immediately." Her assistant hesitated. "All three of them?" She didn't blink. "Yes, all of them." As the SUV door opened, she slipped inside with the same calmness she had when she entered the bank. The difference now was the quiet power in her eyes, the kind of authority that didn't need to raise its voice to be felt. As the car pulled away, she glanced once more at the bank's golden sign gleaming under the sun. It had her family's name engraved at the bottom, a reminder that the people who mocked her had just insulted the very woman who owned the place. And as the car disappeared into traffic, a gust of wind blew against the glass doors, carrying with it the faint echo of her words that would soon change everything inside that bank forever. Across the street, the woman stood silently beside the tinted window of her car, watching through the glass as the bank employees continued their mockery. Inside, she could still see Jessica's proud smirk and the way Tyler and Amanda leaned against the counter, laughing like they'd won something. The sight didn't anger her. It only reminded her how little had changed in 50 years. She looked down at her reflection in the car window, the wrinkles, the tired eyes, the weathered hands, and behind those eyes flickered memories of another time when she had once been the young, desperate girl turned away from a bank just like that. She could still remember the sting of humiliation, standing at a teller's desk decades ago, clutching a small envelope of savings she'd earned cleaning houses. Back then, the clerk hadn't even looked up as he told her, "We don't open accounts for people like you." She had walked out that day in tears, vowing that she would never again let someone make her feel small because of her background, her color, or her clothes. That vow had become the fire that built her empire. Every decision she made, every company she founded, every late night she spent studying numbers and contracts, it all came from that moment of rejection. And now, standing outside her own bank, watching her own employees act with the same cruelty she once faced, she felt something deeper than anger. It was disappointment, the kind that sits in your chest and aches quietly. A black SUV pulled up beside her and the door opened. Her advisor, Marcus, stepped out carrying a thick folder of documents. "The resignation papers, ma'am," he said respectfully, handing them over. She took them but didn't open them right away. Her eyes remained fixed on the bank. "Do you remember why we built this place, Marcus?" she asked softly. He nodded. "You said you wanted a bank where every person would be treated with dignity, where a janitor and a CEO could stand in the same line and feel equal." She gave a faint smile. "Yes," she said. "That was the dream. A place that valued people, not appearances." But somewhere along the way, the dream got diluted. Marcus opened his tablet, showing her a few internal reports. "It's not just this branch," he said. "We've had multiple complaints across the city, staff being rude, refusing service to people who look poor, mocking elderly customers online. It's becoming a culture." The words hit hard. She sighed, closing the folder in her lap. "Then it's worse than I thought," she murmured. "It's not a mistake. It's a disease." Inside the bank, Jessica was now on a video call with her regional manager. Her voice was filled with smug pride. "Handled another one today," she said, laughing. "Some old woman pretending to be a customer. Probably looking for a place to cool off. I told security to walk her out before she scared real clients." The manager on the other end of the screen chuckled. "Good, we don't need that kind of image. Keep the place clean. Keep the right kind of customers." Their laughter echoed through the room, blending with the rhythmic tapping of keyboards and the hum of air conditioning. None of them realized that every word, every sneer, every proud tone was being recorded by their own security system, the same one the woman had installed years ago to ensure transparency and fairness. Back in the car, Marcus adjusted his glasses. "Should we proceed with termination, ma'am?" he asked carefully. She didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were still locked on the glass doors of the bank where a family now walked in, a mother with 2 small children. Jessica straightened her blazer and greeted them with the same fake politeness she had denied to the old woman earlier. The contrast made Violet's jaw tighten. She finally spoke, her voice low and deliberate. If I just fire them, they'll walk away thinking they were victims. I want them to understand the weight of what they did. I want them to feel what they made others feel. Helpless, unseen, small. Marcus hesitated. So, what do you plan to do? She leaned back against the seat, eyes sharp with determination. We'll start with truth, she said. Pull up every complaint, every mistreatment report from the past 2 years. I want full documentation. Customer feedback, internal memos, even their social media posts. Find out who mocked who turned people away, who forgot what this place was built for. Marcus nodded, already typing commands into his tablet. And when you have everything, he asked. She turned toward him with a calm yet chilling smile. Then we remind them who they're working for. The sun began to set behind the tall buildings, bathing the street in golden light. Through the glass, the reflections of laughing employees mixed with passing cars and pedestrians. To anyone else, it was an ordinary day. But for Violet, it was the quiet before a storm. She knew the next step wasn't about punishment. It was about awakening something they'd buried long ago. Humanity. That night, in her study, she sat surrounded by screens. One showed surveillance footage from the bank. Another displayed social media pages where employees had posted mocking jokes about customers. Pictures, hashtags, emojis, all dripping with the same arrogance she had seen that morning. Marcus had compiled everything neatly, but she didn't need words. The images spoke enough. People's pain had become entertainment. She leaned back in her chair, the dim light tracing the outline of her weary face. Her hand trembled slightly as she scrolled through the cruelty that had infested what she once considered her proudest achievement. For a long while, she said nothing. The clock ticked softly in the background. Then, almost in a whisper, she spoke to herself. Not with anger, but with cold resolve. They think it's funny, she said, her voice steady and chilling. Let's see if they're laughing tomorrow. The following morning began like any other in the city, with sunlight spilling through tall glass buildings and traffic murmuring beneath. But inside Violet's penthouse office, the air was tense. Marcus stood near her desk, a thick file in his hands, his expression tight with disbelief. You'll want to see this, he said quietly, sliding the folder toward her. Violet, dressed now in a tailored black suit, adjusted her glasses and opened it slowly. Each printed page told a story darker than she had expected. Screenshots, timestamps, usernames, all belonging to the same employees who had mocked her the previous day. Their social media accounts were filled with venomous jokes, selfies taken at work, and captions that turned vulnerable customers into the punchline of a joke. Tyler had posted a picture of an elderly man counting coins at the counter, captioned, "Still can't afford online banking. Grandpa?" Amanda had uploaded a short video of a homeless woman asking for directions, writing, "Monday, entertainment at First National." And Jessica, the proud manager, had gone a step further, making a series of posts mocking entitlement in rags. One of her comments read, "They should ban poor people from wasting our time." Violet scrolled in silence, her expression unreadable. The cruelty wasn't just occasional. It was consistent, practiced, normalized. Marcus cleared his throat. "It gets worse," he said, switching to his tablet and projecting a new report on the screen. Background checks. We dug deeper. As names and records appeared, Violet leaned forward. The irony cut deep. Tyler, the teller who mocked customers for being broke, was drowning in credit card debt, 3 months behind on his rent, using payday loans to survive. Amanda, the clerk who ridiculed people for being uneducated, had forged her business degree. She'd been rejected by 3 banks before this one for falsifying credentials. And Jessica, the one who prided herself on being above others, had been quietly disciplined in her last branch for mistreating an elderly veteran. Violet closed the file and sat back in her chair. Her eyes lingered on the city skyline, glowing gold in the morning light. "The cruelest people," she murmured, "are often the ones most afraid of being seen." Marcus hesitated before asking, "Should we proceed with termination?" Violet shook her head slowly. "No, not yet. Let their arrogance build. Let them think they're untouchable." Her tone was calm but laced with quiet power. "When they fall, I want it to be their own pride that destroys them, not my hand." Later that afternoon at the bank, the atmosphere was light and casual. Jessica leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone, showing Amanda a meme she had made. "Look," she giggled, "that's from yesterday, the old woman." Someone commented, "She looks like she lives under a bridge." They both laughed. Tyler joined in, smirking. "We should start charging people for just standing here," he said. The trio didn't notice the small blinking light near the security camera, the one Violet had remotely activated hours earlier. Every frame, every cruel word was being recorded in real time. At that same moment, in her office, Violet watched them on a split screen. On one side, their laughter filled the bank lobby. On the other, Marcus scrolled through legal documents and compliance reports. "It's all set," he said. "We have clear violations, workplace harassment, ethics breaches, discriminatory conduct. We can shut them down today." But Violet raised a hand, her gaze fixed on the monitor. "Not yet," she whispered. "Tomorrow morning, there's a shareholders' briefing. We'll make it public. Let the world see what's been festering behind those marble walls." She stood and walked to the window, looking down at the bustling streets below. For a moment, her reflection overlapped with the city lights. A woman who had spent her life fighting to be respected, now confronting the very culture she'd sworn to eliminate. "When I built this bank," she said softly, "I wanted it to be a place where kindness paid interest. But instead, they've turned it into a stage for cruelty." Marcus nodded silently, understanding that this was no longer just about 3 employees. It was about cleansing the institution from its roots. Inside the bank, Jessica received a message from the regional manager praising her professionalism. It boosted her confidence even more. She turned to Tyler. "See? That's how it's done. You stay firm, keep the wrong people out, and management notices." Tyler grinned. "Yeah, maybe I'll get promoted next." Amanda smirked, adding, "If we don't get promoted, at least we'll have enough followers to start a podcast about banking with style." Their laughter filled the air again. Empty. Cruel, self-satisfied, across the street, a car idled quietly. Inside, Marcus watched from a distance, his laptop open, the bank's security feed streaming live. He could hear their voices through the audio link, every insult captured and logged. He looked at Violet, who sat beside him, her expression unreadable. "They really have no idea who you are," he said softly. Violet gave a faint, almost sorrowful smile. "That's the problem, Marcus. They think they know everyone's worth, but they don't see value beyond clothes and money. Tomorrow, they'll learn." As night fell, the city lights shimmered on the wet pavement outside the bank. Tyler locked the doors, still laughing as he checked his phone. A new message appeared in his inbox from an unknown number. He frowned, assuming it was spam, but when he opened it, the message was simple, almost haunting. "Be careful who you humiliate. Some appearances are deceiving." He looked around nervously, but the street was empty except for the hum of distant traffic. For the first time all day, his laughter faded. He slipped his phone into his pocket, unaware that this was the first warning, the quiet beginning of a reckoning that would expose everything they had tried to hide. 3 days later, the glass doors of First National Bank opened once again, but this time, the woman who stepped inside didn't look like someone anyone could mock. A black luxury car had pulled up moments earlier, and from it emerged Violet, poised, graceful, and commanding, dressed in a dark navy suit that shimmered under the morning light. Her hair was neatly styled, her posture regal, her eyes calm but piercing. The same marble floors that had once echoed with laughter at her expense now fell into a hush as every head turned. Jessica froze mid-conversation, her forced smile quickly returning as she straightened her blazer and whispered to Tyler, "Important client, stay sharp." Amanda smoothed her skirt nervously, pretending to sort documents, unaware that their entire world was about to collapse. Violet walked slowly across the lobby, her heels clicking against the floor like the sound of judgment itself. She stopped at the front desk where Jessica stood, nervously smiling. "Good morning," Jessica said sweetly, her tone almost syrupy. Welcome to First National Bank. How can I help you today? Violet looked her straight in the eyes, her calm voice cutting through the air. Tell Mr. Davidson, she said, that the bank owner is here. For a heartbeat, the entire room froze. Jessica blinked, the words failing to process. I'm sorry, ma'am, could you repeat that? Violet tilted her head slightly, repeating, Tell Mr. Davidson the bank owner is here. The silence that followed was so heavy that even the sound of the ticking wall clock felt loud. Tyler's mouth dropped open. Amanda's hands trembled slightly as she fumbled with her papers. A few customers turned their heads, sensing something extraordinary. Moments later, Mr. Davidson, the regional director, came rushing out from his office, his face pale. Madam Violet, he stammered, we weren't expecting. She raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Clearly, she said. If you had been, I wouldn't have been escorted out of my own building 3 days ago. The color drained from Jessica's face as she suddenly remembered the old woman she had mocked. The voice, the calmness, it was her. Tyler took a step back, his hands clammy, while Amanda's eyes filled with tears. The realization hit them all like thunder. Marcus entered behind Violet, carrying a briefcase. He placed it on the counter and opened it slowly. For documentation, he said. Inside were folders, identification, and the original founding papers of the bank. The embossed seal gleamed under the lights, bearing Violet's full name as the primary founder and chairwoman. Davidson swallowed hard. Madam, if I could just explain. Again, she stopped him. There's no explanation needed. I didn't come here for apologies. I came here for accountability. Marcus pressed a button on his tablet, and the large screen behind the teller counters flickered to life. The security footage began to play. The bank employees watched in horror as the scene from 3 days ago appeared. Their own laughter, their cruel remarks, every humiliating word captured in crystal clarity. The customers in the lobby turned to watch, whispering to each other as Jessica's voice echoed from the speakers. We don't handle donations. The color drained completely from her face. Then came Tyler's sneer, Amanda's giggle, all of it looping back for everyone to see. As the footage ended, Marcus switched to screenshots of their social media posts. Each image appeared one by one. The jokes, the comments, the hashtags mocking poor and elderly customers. Then came the background reports, their debts, the fake degree, the prior misconduct. The employees' faces turned ghostly pale. Jessica covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. Please, she whispered, I didn't mean. Violet's voice interrupted softly but firmly. You meant every word. You thought no one was watching. But the truth always watches. Tyler tried to speak, his voice trembling. It was just a joke. She looked at him sharply. Jokes lose their humor when they're built on someone else's pain. Amanda began to sob quietly, unable to lift her head. Security arrived at Marcus's signal, standing beside the trembling employees. Violet didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her voice was calm, steady, and final. You were trusted to represent what this institution stands for. Dignity, equality, respect. You failed on every level. Today, that ends. As the guards escorted them out, Jessica turned back, crying, Please, I need this job. Violet's expression softened only slightly. So did the people you humiliated, she said gently. Now you'll understand how it feels. Turning to Davidson, Violet's eyes hardened again. And you, she said. Negligence has consequences. You will undergo a full corporate ethics retraining, effective immediately. If I see another incident like this, I won't just fire people, I'll dismantle departments. Davidson nodded quickly, his voice barely a whisper. Yes, Madam Violet, 6 months passed. The headlines about the scandal faded, but its lessons did not. Violet launched a nationwide initiative, Dignity for All, a program that trained bank employees across the country on respect, empathy, and fairness. The campaign became a movement, transforming the way customers were treated everywhere. The very bank that had once been a place of humiliation had become a model of kindness and reform. One bright morning, Violet walked quietly into that same branch. This time, no one laughed. No one whispered. Instead, she watched a young employee kneel down to help an elderly man fill out a deposit slip, smiling patiently as he explained each line. The sight brought a small smile to her face, soft, proud, and full of peace. As she turned to leave, sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows, bathing the lobby in warmth. And as the scene faded, the narrator's voice carried the closing words, slow, steady, and meaningful. The best revenge isn't to destroy those who hurt us. It's to build something so great that their cruelty becomes irrelevant.